Hello, my name is Michaela, and I am on the disagree side for our group 4 in HSC 500. And I will actually be responding to my colleague Aaron's post on the affirmative side of our argument. So Aaron argued the point that when humanity defines their own truth, that it leads to destruction. He provided biblical references of individuals who attempted to find their identity in other things outside of God. He also provided statistical figures on suicidal attempts among transgender and non binary individuals. I would actually like to first address the suicide rates as a whole. So, suicide rates have increased 35.2% from 1999 to 2018, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. In 2019, there were 1.38 suicidal attempts, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. The highest rate of suicide was actually among middle-aged white men. So, based on that information, the suicide rates are increasing across the board. It's not just among transgenders. According to a study conducted at UCLA School of Law, they actually did a study on the suicidal thoughts and attempts among the transgender population. They reported that many of the risk factors that cause transgenders to have suicidal thoughts or attempts were based on discrimination, family rejection, lack of access to gender-affirming healthcare, etc. It also reports this important note that the individuals who actually detransitioned, which means they went through the process of returning to their original sex at birth, were more likely to report suicidal thoughts and attempts. These statistics here that I presented are not due to individuals having an identity problem or a lack of identity in God. I believe that these suicidal thoughts and unhappiness can be caused simply by living in the world, dealing with human nature. Even individuals who aren't transgender have the ability to be unhappy and even attempt suicide. Pastor Jared Wilson and Darren Patrick, who were both pastors, had their own churches, worked heavily in the ministry, who individuals would believe had their identity confirmed in God, actually they both committed suicide within a year of each other. Would we basically conclude that they committed this act due to a lack of identity in God? Let's take a biblical figure, for example, Elijah, who had his identity confirmed by God as a prophet. He still battled depression and unhappiness. He is actually noted by theologians as dealing with depression. In 1 Kings 19:4, it notes there that Elijah actually prayed for God to kill him after he performed this miracle of calling for fire from heaven. I believe also that one of the things we need to note here in our argument is that we need to be able to separate physical identity versus spiritual identity. Transgenders and transracials, for example, would like to change their physical identities. This does not automatically equate to changing their spiritual identity, or as Aaron would like to define as their identity in Christ. Those who identify as another gender or ethnic group do not abandon their identity in Christ as a child of God if they choose to be believers. In 1 Samuel 16:7, God actually told Samuel that man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And while identity is defined physically by men, identity to God is based on your heart. Physical identity versus spiritual identity in a sense. So in my conclusion, though transgenders and transracials would like to change their physical identities, they are not automatically changing their heart conditions. So while we talk about destruction in the world is mainly due to a contrary heart against God, a contrary heart condition, not necessarily, not due to a contrary physical label.